Hello, welcome to Weencast, Ween off the cuff, Riverdale, Season 7, Episode 11, Halloween 2. That's the name of the episode. The name of the episode is Halloween, Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 1. The episode is called Halloween 2. I'm pretty sure there's not been an episode called Halloween 1, so it's clearly named Halloween 2 after the film Halloween 2. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you also to my loyal viewers for their patience since I was not able to upload last week. Roberto saw that I was in need, and presumably that's why Riverdale is off for this week, so I had time to catch up. However, I'm sorry to say I will be traveling next week as well, so I'm not sure when the next update will be, but if I can't update next week, then I will update as soon as I'm able to, maybe with a double episode if several episodes have built up in reserve. With that out of the way, let's get on to the action of Halloween 2. We open with Jughead confronting Sheriff Kevin's dad with this news about how, oh my god, it was a milkman. That crazy cat lady heard a milkman on the night Brad Raybury died, so obviously it was a milkman because a milkman also murdered Ethel's parents. And you'll be shocked to hear that Sheriff Kevin's dad is like, this is not evidence. Jughead, this is not evidence. Um, it's not evidence is the thing. And Jughead does not do himself any favors with how he exposits this. And he's also obsessively now afraid of milk, and he panics when he sees anyone drink milk, and he only drinks powdered milk. And as a long time not milk fan, I have to say I love this for Jughead. I mean, I like many dairy products. I just never been someone who enjoys the act of drinking just milk by itself. Choco milk, okay, but just milk, mm, I'm not with it. Um, but what's also important that Sheriff Keller mentions in this scene is that teenagers in Riverdale are not allowed to celebrate Halloween because of some stupid footloose ass rules that they have. And the only person who doesn't know this is Veronica. And so the next day at school, she dresses up as a sexy witch because she's Veronica. And everybody else is like, oh my god, she's dressed up at school. She's dressed up in costume. Does she not know? Betty is horny for her, though, because Betty's right. And Archie explains about how in Riverdale they can't celebrate Halloween, unlike in Greendale, where Sabrina lives, because they have a sundown curfew on Halloween night due to a tragic car accident a few years ago where a car was overturned and 4 Riverdale High School students, 2 bulldogs, and 2 cheerleaders died. And Veronica's like, well, that sucks. And Reggie says, well, we don't even have Halloween in Duck Creek, so I've never had a Halloween. I don't know why he's Jimmy Carter now, but he is. And Veronica says, we're gonna have Halloween because Halloween is important for bisexuals and it's important for dead people, and it's also like how I transitioned into celebrating Dia de los Muertos, so it's important for me as a Latin person as well. And those are 3 really important demographics in Veronica's opinion and thus my own. And so obviously we got to have something happen for Halloween. She's not going to let Halloween pass uncelebrated no matter what the government of Riverdale says. But before she can even get any further in her plan, Jughead rushes into the student lounge where everybody else is and then has a milk-related episode and starts screaming about how they have to buy powdered milk and they have to stop drinking their little milk cartons, and like fast zoom on Archie's face as he drinks a carton of milk, and Jughead is just in a state of horror. It reminded me a lot of a profile of Philip K. Dick that I read recently, where he said a lot of absolutely bamboozling shit, and I was like, he's just like me for real, but in the bad way, in the nutcase way. But after that, Jughead calls Ethel to tell her about his investigation and his news about the milkman. And I, for one, was happy to see Ethel. And Ethel had some good thoughts for Jughead. She suggests that he investigate the author of the Milkman comic book, because of course that's where we all first heard about this killer milkman idea. And now that Jughead literally works at the comic book company, he might as well, ask around. Ethel also implies that she's about to escape from the Sisters of Quiet Mercy, which is good because, as we all know, the Sisters of Quiet Mercy are creepy. They are gay conversion therapists, and they are part of a suicide cult, which has always been established in prior seasons. And in fact, the sister that we see in the background is Sister Woodhouse, their leader in all the previous seasons, back when we were 67 years in the past and the future. And so I think we can't not assume that they are still a gay conversion death cult that worships the Gargoyle King. So hopefully Ethel can get out of there real fast. Yeah. Um, in the shop class, Betty, Reggie, and Archie are working on fixing up Reggie's jalopy together, and Reggie and Archie are having guy talk about car parts, and Betty is unable to focus because she's having beef sandwich fantasies as she watches them work on the car, and she's like, "Oh my god, sexo, sexo, sexo," and she's not wrong. She's not wrong. She's not wrong. But she does wake up just long enough to be like, "Oh, Reggie's never had Halloween. We gotta do something fun for him for Halloween. We gotta go out trick or treating. We gotta hang out in a cemetery, and we gotta make out in a haunted house." And Reggie and Archie are like, "Okay, that sounds pretty fun." Understandably. That night, Veronica is in the Babylonium where she lives now because she's the wealthiest homeless teen in the world, and she is pondering what she's going to do for Halloween when she hears a weird noise in the projection room. And she runs over there thinking it's a ghost, but it's not. It's Kevin and Clay making out because they needed some privacy. Um, and she's quick to forgive. She's like, "Oh, you silly guys." And she tells them the new idea she's had for a Halloween ghost show with a 1920s glam theme. A 1920s glam ghost show. Kevin and Clay are understandably confused because what is a ghost show? But according to Veronica, it's monsters, it's movies, it's burlesque, and it's an attempt at resurrection. Okay. Alright. She's got me interested. The next day at school, Veronica and Clay advertise the ghost show, and they promise that by the end of the show, they will have resurrected the four teens who died in the tragic car crash that caused Halloween to be canceled in Riverdale, which is exactly the kind of extremely poor taste advertising I like to see from Veronica's businesses. Jughead is down at PEP. He's talking to the editor in chief, and the editor in chief doesn't remember who wrote the Milkman story, but he points out that they're going to have a Halloween party at the office that night, so Jughead should just come to the party. So Jughead is out of the ghost show plotline. He is in his own plotline about the milkman. Also at school, Tony invites Cheryl to be in the ghost show with her because Tony's going to dance in the ghost show for Veronica. But Cheryl has to demur because she has to lead the Vixen cheerleader sleepover. And Tony is sad because Halloween is literally gay Christmas, so it's the only time that they, get to really be themselves and dress up. And those of us who have to wear masks all the time, finally we can take off the mask by putting on the mask or something to that effect. Julian, the worst person alive, and not just because he doesn't have any damn eyebrows, schemes to go out wildin' with the Bulldogs, even though Uncle Frank specifically said to the whole team, "Don't go out wildin', boys. That's not allowed." Nonetheless, Julian's planning to go out and wild. And our heroes beg off. Fangs is like, "I'm playing the ghost show," and Julian's like, "I didn't want you there anyway because you're a greaser." And Reggie and Archie are like, "No thanks, Julian." And Julian's like, "You're a bunch of cream puffs," because Julian is the bad guy. And he's a dick. He doesn't have any damn eyebrows. Also, in the other locker room, Veronica and Betty are talking about Betty's big plans to take her two hot boyfriends out for Halloween and make out with both of them. And obviously, Veronica's like, hell yeah, sister. Because again, Veronica loves like voyeurism and weird sexual mind games much more than she likes actual full contact sex. Um, and she's like, you gotta test out Reggie and Archie and see which one is the winner, and then you gotta come tell me all about it. Girl boss. At breakfast at the Blossom House, whichever one this is, Thornhill, Doom Manor, whatever, Penelope is like, Cheryl, you have to have the sleepover in the public rooms, in the great hall, and not in your bedroom, so you don't get up to any inappropriate hanky panky. And Julian feigns elaborate disgust at the idea of girls getting it on with each other, and Cheryl is, of course, sadly humiliated. Other evil mothers, such as Alice Cooper, are also on the loose in Riverdale. Alice has burst into the Babylonium while they're trying to set up for the ghost show and confronts Veronica about how this ghost show is going to compete with the Cooper's RIVW Halloween programming, where Alice and Hal dress up in goofy costumes and do really cheesy, dumb sketches in between showing like cheap horror movies. And Veronica's like, I don't think we're competing for demographics because this isn't really a family ghost show. We're really more interested in a teen audience. And Alice is like, you're just someone who loves to make trouble, aren't you, Veronica? And they have girl boss to girl boss combat. Meanwhile, Jughead is in his train car stockpiling powdered milk. And who should appear but Ethel, battered, uh, beat up, muddy but unbroken, and escaped from the Sisters of Quiet Mercy. So, of course, Jughead's like, Ethel, you got away. What happened? And she talks about the secret tunnels, which we already know about because of that time that our heroes used the secret tunnels to rescue Cheryl from the gay conversion program. I think it was. I think it was Cheryl they rescued. Um, and Ethel goes on at length about how horrible it was that the Sisters of Quiet Mercy, understandably, because I think we have to assume it was horrible, and explains that she needs to hide out for just a couple more months, because once she's 18, she's not going to be a ward of the state anymore, so she can't be forced to do all the things that, like, go to the Sister of Quiet Mercy and be at the mercy of the whims of the mayor and the evil principal and whatever bullshit. So she needs to hide somewhere until she's 18, but it's too obvious that she would be at Jughead's train car because everybody knows they're friends. So he offers her Brad Rayberry's apartment, which is paid up until the end of the year, as long as she doesn't mind living in the apartment where a guy was just recently murdered. Should be fine. And Jughead also invites her to the Pep Comics Halloween party so that they can scope out who might be the Milkman murderer. At school, I guess the next day? Is it nighttime? Is it daytime? God only knows. Midge backs out of the sleepover because she wants to go see Fangs perform because her character trait is that she's Fang's pregnant girlfriend. Um, and Cheryl is a little bit upset by this until she realizes it could be a great opportunity. If she tries to be less Cheryl and more like a nice person, to bond with Midge and have them both get to spend time with their partner in a safe, fun place. And so she offers to Midge that they will both feign sickness. Cheryl will assign horrible Evelyn Evernever to host the sleepover, and the two of them can go to the ghost show together, and then they can hang out with Fangs and Tony. And perhaps open their hearts to each other since they both have heavy secrets. Jughead gets interrogated by the principal and the sheriff and Dr. Werther's about Ethel's escape and does he know where Ethel is and is Ethel in his apartment, and he's like, LOL, no. Jughead doesn't talk to cops. Fuck you. And then It's Halloween night. Reggie is dressed up as like a sexy leather Buck Rogers spaceman, which honestly, wig. Okay. Alright. And Archie is, of course, a cowboy. And they discuss with each other. Oh, Archie's a little bit jealous of how close Reggie and Betty have gotten. And Reggie does feel like Betty's attracted to him, but Archie's like, she's been my best girl since I was 8. And they have a little bit of that is very special, extremely homoerotic tension that two guys in a show or a movie have about a girl that they're both interested in. But is it really about the girl? Is it about them? That's what I learned from the head of my film studies department. That's not a joke. Um, and Reggie says they should pledge not to be jealous. If it looks like Betty's going to pick one of them or the other that night, the other guy should, you know, honorably bow out, give him some space. And then they agree to that, and then twice they quick draw on each other with their toy guns in a way that is so profound to me. They're boy best friends. At the Pep Comics party, Jughead and Ethel show up, and the effeminate secretary of Pep Comics is so excited to see Jughead, and clearly I think he's supposed to be a little bit drunk, that he screams, "Jughead!" and runs up and hugs Jughead. But I would do the same, so he's right. And Ethel and Jughead start to mingle in with the party and the other comic book writers. Over at Betty's house, the boys are hanging out. Reggie, Archie, and also Dilton is there because Dilton is small and weedy. He's gonna feign being a child so they can take him trick or treating, so Reggie can experience what trick or treating is like. And I sympathize with Dilton as the small and weedy person in almost every friend group that I am ever in. I often have to feign being a child so everybody else can go trick or treating. And then they're speculating, oh, what do you think Betty's gonna be? And they're like, oh, maybe she's gonna be like a princess or a fairy. And then she comes out, no, she's hot Goldilocks. Because, and I quote, Goldilocks couldn't decide which bed she liked best, so she tried all three. Yes. Girl boss. And thus, Buck Rogers, Cowboy, Hot Goldilocks, and Pumpkinhead Dilton set out for a fun Halloween night. But it doesn't last long because while they're out getting candy, they see Julian driving around with the other bulldogs, smashing mailboxes and pumpkins with a baseball bat. And Dilton bows out immediately because he's like, I'm wearing a pumpkin head mask. Dilton's going to smash me next. And, like, okay, sidebar, that's terrifying that Dilton is concerned about basically, like, the possibility of being beaten to death, right? Like, hitting somebody in the head with a baseball bat is, like, no joke, okay? But you know what? Julian is an absolute sicko. He would. He literally would. At the ghost show, we have the pre-party, and we discover the 1920s glam theme party at the Babylonium was, of course, an excuse to do our cheap-ass TV version of the one shot from Babylon, where it's the whole party and there's the debauchery, but obviously there's nobody topless and pissing on each other because it's the CW. But the spirit is there. And Fangs is doing live music, is super goofy, and Cheryl and Tony rendezvous before the show, and Tony's really happy that Cheryl's there and that they're going to get to perform for each other or with each other. Jughead is at the party. He's investigating. He's interviewing the other writers, asking them if they knew who wrote the Milkman story. And finally he finds one guy who's like, yeah, I know the guy, the writer, Ted Sullivan. Jughead's like, Ted Sullivan? And the writer's like, yeah, Ted Sullivan. Jughead's like, where can I find Ted Sullivan? The writer's like, oh, he died. Yeah, he He hung himself in his apartment right after he wrote the Milkman story with a long note about how he could never write another story. And Jughead's like, oh fuck, another Milkman related death, you say? But the writer guy's like, no, no, Jughead, you have to listen to me. It's a metaphor. It's a critique of America. And Jughead's like, what are you talking about? What's a metaphor? It's a metaphor. It's a critique of America. It's not the commies who are the enemy. The enemy is here at home. The enemy is homogenous, oppressive, normative culture. And I said, Wig? Roberto? He's, I'm telling you, it's all coming together. And there's a reason that I've seen a lot of people I respect as Daleologists online who are mad about the 1950s time jump, who feel like we're not going anywhere with the plots, who feels like the plots are in bad taste, which they are obviously, who feels like it doesn't like we're not getting anything out of the 1950s. I'm telling you, it's all going to pay off. It's all coming together. They said it now. It's all going to make sense soon. I believe. Faith manages. Um, Meanwhile, the Archie, Betty, Reggie thruple is having fun in the cemetery. Reggie and Betty are hanging out on a crypt and they're howling like wolves. And Reggie's kind of making his move, talking about all the wolves in Duck Creek, but they never messed with him because he's an alpha. He does say that. He does say that. And Betty's a little turned on by that, but then she gets a little worried because she doesn't know where Archie is, and she realizes that the cemetery is not as fun of a spot for Archie because his dad is buried here. And Archie's off at his dad's graveside. And it's sad. It's always sad when we have to talk about Archie's dead dad, especially because his dad died in real life, and that was sad in real life. Now we're sad in the story and in real life. But Archie is like, no, it's all good, Betty. I'm not too upset. I'm just reminiscing about how my mom and dad used to take us both trick or treating when we were kids. Remember that? Those were the good times. They hold hands and reminisce romantically. And when Reggie comes up on them, he's like, oh, they do have a deeper connection because of their childhood together. And then the three of them go to the haunted house. But the haunted house is Ethel's house, which again I feel is in poor taste. Those people just died and they were the parents of your classmate. But okay, teenagers have never been in very good taste. And honestly, all three of them are a little freaked out by this too. Betty goes off to rifle through the fridge to see if there's any 11 up in there. And Reggie nobly decides it's time to step aside for Betty and Archie. And Archie's like, are you sure, buddy? And Reggie's like, yeah, you got a deep connection. It's fine. And Reggie, he's a good guy like that. Oddly, since he's been evil every other season, but in a lovable way. He's still a good guy like that. Back at the Babylonium, it's time for the floor show of the ghost show. Veronica gives a little speech. She's dressed up as Victoria Frankenstein, which is Girl Frankenstein, obviously. And she talks about how Boris Karloff is her godfather, obviously. And then she steps aside to get in her quick change because the floor show is Tony, Clay, Kevin, and Cheryl as the 14s who died doing a song from Rocky Horror where Veronica obviously is Dr. Frankenfurter and Clay is Rocky and I don't remember who else is in that song. I'll be real with you. But they do a lively performance of the song. Um, it's the song about, I think it's the song that is like Dr. Frankenfurter's like big entrance or something, because it's about sexo, and about just living true with sexo. And Cheryl is so smote by the spirit that she kisses Tony right on stage, and everybody's like, "Whoa, crazy, what?" Luckily, that happens before Alice Cooper sneaks in on the show. because then she would be really scandalized. But as is just seeing Clay dance around in just his shorts and Veronica in her suit because instead of dressing up in like a sexy corset to be Dr. Frankenfurter, she dresses up in a whole coat and tails ensemble, which I think really rules, and she leads them in the dance. Uh, and it rules, and so obviously Alice Cooper is horrified and enraged. On his lonely walk home from the haunted house, Reggie is confronted by Julian and his carload full of evil skeleton bulldogs, and they bully him into getting into the car with them to go to Greendale to cause trouble. And at the haunted house itself, Archie and Betty are like in Ethel's parents' room, which is gross. Maybe it's Ethel's room, but that's maybe even grosser. But either way, they're sitting on the bed and they're like, "Oh, I'm nervous, but it's like this is apotheosis, right? This is what we're supposed to do." And so Archie makes his move on Betty, but then she screams and jumps away because the milkman is in the window and there's fresh milk on the table. They gotta get out there. They gotta leave. It's milk time. After the end of the show at the Babylonium, Veronica is riding high on all their success, and she suggests they start doing a weekly midnight movie to capitalize on this appetite for goofy B movie stuff that the people of Riverdale have. Surprisingly, I know no one saw that coming. But Kevin and Clay are like, we need to do a little intervention with you first, Veronica. How long have you been homeless and living at the Babylonium? And she's like, no, 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 it's not what you think. It's not about my parents. The Pembroke is just being renovated right now. I'll be back home before Thanksgiving. Um, and I don't think the boys really buy it, and they shouldn't, because it's a lie. Veronica's the richest homeless girl in the world. At Pops, Midge, Fang, Cheryl, and Tony are hanging out together, and they bond over their shared secrets of being pregnant or gay, and they become friends, and it's nice. It's nice. They had a nice time together. They're all closer as friends now. They feel safe together. Too bad evil Evelyn is watching from the register where she's like picking up her food, and of course, as we know, um, she's both racist and homophobic. Also, in previous seasons, she was a fake teen who was an adult who was the secret sister wife of Chad Michael Murray, and she stole organs. No, actually, if I remember right, Chad Michael Murray stole the organs to put them in her to keep her young. She had some kind of deadly wasting. Anyway, the point is, she's a bad guy. We all know this. She's going to do something bad with this information. Archie drops Betty off at her house, and they try to kiss again, but they're still interrupted, this time by Alice instead of the milkman, but again, equally evil. And all alone in the upstairs of the Babylonium, Veronica does her Dias de los Muertos rituals, and she sits sadly on her couch and looks at a picture of her with her evil parents when they used to celebrate together. It was their one thing, their one like family ritual and thing that they did together that they actually liked each other. But once again, she's alone, living in the attic of her movie theater because her parents rejected her because they liked their sitcom Oh Mija better. It's so hard to be Veronica. Jughead drops Ethel off at Brad Rayberry's apartment after the Pet Comics party. He obviously doesn't make a move, whether you choose to believe this is because he's asexual or because he's in love with Tabitha. Either way, point is, he doesn't want to go inside with Ethel. He's tired and he wants to go home because he's what the kids call relatable. But when Ethel goes inside the apartment and locks the door behind her, we see, oh my god, the milkman is there. Oh shit. Uh, and as Jughead walks down the hall, he bumps into the crazy cat lady from last episode again, and she's like, I thought you were the milkman. I heard his bottles clanking, and I was looking for more milk. And of course, Jughead's like, the milkman, oh no! And he runs back to the apartment, and he smashes down the door, and he crashes into the apartment to find The milkman, dead, stabbed to death by Ethel. Yes, yes. Girl boss, once again. Yes. Love that for her. And then she holds up the bloody knife and she's like, I kept saying it was a milkman. And it was. It wasn't a milkman. But there's still one more coda on the episode because Archie, peaceably asleep in his little Archie bed in his little Archie room, is woken up suddenly by Uncle Frank. And Uncle Frank's like, Archie, you gotta get up, in that scary voice that dads always use when like a really bad thing has happened and they want you to stand there next to them while it's happening, so that you know how to grow up and be a man. Um, and Archie's like, what's going on, Dad? Um, and uh, by dad I mean uncle, uh, patriarchal figure of my family. What's going on, Uncle Frank? And Uncle Frank explains there was a terrible accident, and a car with many bulldogs went off the bridge into Sweetwater River on the way to Greendale. Yes, Julian's car. And right now they don't know if there were any survivors. Was Reggie in there? Will Julian survive? Must Cheryl's twin brothers always die in Sweetwater River? Obviously, the answer is yes. Ugh, delicious. Ugh, Halloween 2. And again, I enjoyed this episode. It had everything I expect from a Riverdale episode. A lot of poor taste activities, an extensive and exciting musical number, and just absolute crazy coconuts bullshit. What more does a man need in television? I think nothing. I'm glad we're now keying back in to the Milkman Ethel storyline at full speed. I'm glad that that random comic book writer character spoke the words we needed to hear about it's a metaphor, it's a critique of America, the enemy is here at home, which we have to obviously interpret as a meta commentary on Riverdale because there's nothing on Riverdale. It's not a meta commentary on Riverdale, right? And I've believed this. I mean, I think it's always been true on some stupid level, but ever since the time travel episode last season, where, and I've explained this before on the show, but I'm going to keep doing it, where Tabitha went back in time and there was all the social justice issues of the past that were exposited poorly through a frame that didn't make sense for the actual time periods, but was bizarrely allegorical to the way that many social justice issues are progressing now. That the whole point of returning to the 1950s, 67 years in the past, in the future, is for us to interpret the like reactionary right wing political movements of today, because that is their desire, right? Is to return us to the 1950s, but not like the real 1950s, but like this weird phantasmagorical vision of the 1950s that is shaped mostly by cultural products and produces this idea that a life completely constrained by societal expectations and norms will improve our own lives when really there are much more pressing problems facing us, such as that there's a comet speeding towards the Earth and we're all going to die. Riverdale is going to be hit with an extinction level event if we don't do something soon. Um, but that this world, this idealized world that is being impressed upon us by in the frame of Riverdale, Principal Featherhead, Dr. Werther's Evelyn, Brett, Julian, um, is one that is actually fundamentally unsustainable. That even without the memories of our previous lives, 67 years in the past and the future, uh, ultimately, the difference is effusive and uncontainable. Therefore, the nature of our heroes are their struggles this season being either based in 1950s social justice issues that are poorly handled, or in being sexually insane, or in their desire to be just like really weird, or in their fear that um, the kind of like most benevolent and harmless figures of this suburban Americana, such as the milkman who not only is like a charming figure, although also has the kind of like double mirror reverse figure of being like also like the subject of always the sexual deviant joke of like, oh, you were really fathered by a milkman. But the milkman who not only is this kind of like figure of suburbia, such that he often appears as the creepy bad guy in lots of other like suburban 1950s referencing media, but is also like the literal bearer of like literalized a physical whiteness, a physical whiteness. Um, Milk, the nothingest of drinks, um, the most white of drinks, being delivered to each house, and yet also what is being delivered is death. Obviously. Obviously. And that's I still believe, if anything, this episode confirmed for me more and more that that's where we're going, that Roberto and I understand each other, and that uh, all will be well, and all manner of thing will be well. And by that I mean like so bad, like so just utterly disastrous, mind-bogglingly fucked up nightmare scenario, both in Riverdale and here in real life. The other thing I wanted to address before we close, Betty. Betty being sexually insane. I've seen a lot of people online, again, many of them Daleologists I respect, who are upset by the Betty is sexually insane storyline. Um, that they feel like, oh, it's reducing her character to being horny all the time. Oh, it's like, it's bad. It's bad for women. How dare they? How dare they make a woman who's sexually insane and horny all the time? Here's the thing. Some of my best friends are sexually insane. Sexually insane people who are horny all the time. That's just who they are. It's okay. It's okay that Betty just wants to have threesome fantasies about Reggie and Archie right now. It's fine. She's allowed. It's fine. This is a fine plot for Betty to have. One of the themes of this season is sexual repression, sexual oppression. The repression of just the idea that people can be horny all the time is a negative one. Some people are horny all the time. That's fine. It's fine. And they need Betty as a role model. This is representation. Some people some people feel so unseen in terms of how horny they are. They don't get to see themselves outside of pornography. And that's who Betty is for them. And I feel I have to speak up for the people in my life who are sexually insane. Horny people have often been accused of not deserving rights. I've said it before myself. God willing, I will say it again. But they they do deserve to have a character on Riverdale. because Riverdale itself is so horny. I mean, come on. I think that brings us a wrap. Another exciting episode. This time about Halloween, but it's June. But I guess that's why Halloween is Gay Christmas. Thank you for listening. Uh, I will see you hopefully soon when I'm next able to post. Sometime in the future. 67 years in the past in the future. This has been your Ween.